Talking about his future, John Cena told Ellen DeGeneres that he was not sure whether he'd be at WrestleMania 38, but said he isn't done with WWE. WrestleMania is usually in late March, early April. I don't know if I'm going to make it this year. That's a good conundrum to have, because there are a lot of good opportunities coming up, which I would love to take. If all those things line up, I don't know if I'll be able to make WrestleMania. I will tell everybody watching, I'm not done with WWE by a long shot. That's my home, I love it. I was able to go back during the summer for a few months and entertain audiences when they welcomed audiences back to arenas, and I far from had my last performance. With many of Triple H's closest confidants being released from WWE, it seems that the creative on the brand is now in the hands of Bruce Pritchard, according to PW Insider. Pritchard will be running creative with Christine Lubrano, and their head writer will be Johnny Russo, as he's been with the company since 2011. Son of WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley, Dewey will also be on the NXT creative team, with him most recently being in charge of 205 Live, as Foley will be joined in this role by Anthony Golden Jr. And with Triple H still out of action, it remains to be seen what changes are to come and how much more alterations NXT can endure. With Hulk Hogan suggesting the late Betty White died because she was vaccinated, fans have taken to Twitter to blast the wrestling legend. Here's some of the reactions. Hulk Hogan is anti-vax, thus continuing the trend of steroid enthusiasts worrying about the possible adverse effects of a life-saving vaccine. Cool. Hulk Hogan bent over for years injecting steroids into his posterior, and probably by other men and women for decades. Wants to talk about injecting vaccines? Betty White will live more years on this planet than he will. He probably has massive heart damage. Hulk Hogan is anti-jab. No needles for the Hulkster. Never, not once, has his leathery skin been pierced with a hypodermic needle. A shot? Not this man. And just like that, Sarah Palin is an authority on sex and Hulk Hogan is a scientist. You're in trouble, America. With Kenny Omega responding to fans on Twitter the other day, he would bring up Jim Cornette. Now Omega has apologized for his comment as he wrote, "Shouldn't have brought up any breathing issue. I, as well as many friends and acquaintances in other sports, are suffering due to COVID after effects. Not sure if you'll accept, but I do apologize." Cornette would respond writing, "Piss off with your phony apology BS, Turd Blossom. I've never had COVID. I don't want to have any interaction with you and your phony wrestling. And I don't have any breathing issues except when you're on the air I refuse to breathe it." A tweet from the AEW on TV account put out a now deleted meme meant to mock Alexa Bliss's therapy session on Raw. While some fans saw this as insensitive, many found humor in it, as one user wrote, "We live in a culture that still devalues mental illness. I don't think they meant ill by this, but it's still tone deaf for a company that claims to be progressive. In fact, they've been tone deaf on a lot of things for which they claim to be progressive." Talking to Chris Van Vliet about his time in WWE, Karrion Kross noted that he would be open to returning under the right conditions. "I wouldn't be surprised. I, respectfully, wouldn't go back under these same circumstances just out of a logical standpoint. I definitely think I would be interested in a lot more certain things. I think one of my biggest mistakes in general was, I do pride myself on being a pleasure to work with whatever is I'm doing. I like to create that good energy that goes around, and oftentimes I probably should be a little more assertive when I think something is a bad idea. But I think this time around, with this particular situation, I was really concerned about possibly having to go back out there into a national economy which, for lack of better words, is still recovering. I think about my family. I think about people that I need to take care of, that I want to take care of. I think about my future, and working for WWE was the best place to be secure, stuff like that." Becky Lynch went from the man to big-time Bex, but not without controversy, as the Nature Boy laid claim to the title demand, even threatening WWE with legal action. Talking about this on his podcast, Flair took a shot at the promotion for letting Lynch use his trademarks. "Ultimately, the people that did that to me need to look in the mirror and know that I worked my whole career for that to belong to my daughter or my son. They need to look at themselves in the mirror. They have to say to themselves, boy, he took something that he worked his whole life, his butt off for, every day, made a joke of it, and gave it away." Also on his podcast, Ric Flair made his feelings known about WWE President Nick Khan, saying Khan buried him before he left the company. We did not have the same vision for me. And then Nick Khan makes it personal, just because I no longer wanted to work there, and I wanted to do things like this so I can reflect on my career. Nick just decides to bury me. I need someone to explain this to me. How on God's green earth do you take the Flairs, take that brand, and not make it a fixture of that company? With WWE releasing so many talent and backstage personnel, John Cena suddenly rich eyes and showed that he sympathizes with those being let go. They're also quite bullish on continuing to hire new talent, so the NXT Performance Center is, I do not want to say overwhelmed, but they were at max capacity. So you have all of these performers, and a lot of them are not getting a chance to perform. And I think that's the real frustrating thing, both to the WWE and from a stance of a performer. I was brought up in biannual cuts, and it happened all the time, and I just think WWE went through such a long period of not releasing anybody, and now the company is going back into that rhythm again, that it is a very abrupt shift to somebody who's not familiar with that, and I do. My heart goes out to everybody who has to get that sad news, because that's a tough conversation to have. CM Punk would take to Twitter yesterday to say, still in a pandemic, if you're waiting in an airport to get stuff signed, you need to stop doing that. This would lead to a user replying to Punk with a gif of him jumping into a crowd at an AEW show, saying, "This you?" Punk responded, "Sure is me," at a show. Post-vax, pre-Omicron, had to show proof of vax to gain entrance. Not stalking anyone at an airport or hotel. How stupid are you? This would cause Punk to trend on Twitter, so here's some of the reactions from fans. I think it's bad to do it at airports and shows, but some wrestlers don't care like Edge and CM Punk, but it bugs me he's using the COVID card to make the other people come off as a-holes, when he said before he doesn't like taking pictures with fans unless they're kids. Maybe you, but most of people would read that tweet and think, wow, CM Punk had a great connection with his fans, and move on. Do you really? Most people would tweet him saying, ew, Punk, you need to stay away from fans. Save those times for when they pay $200 at Comic-Con. Of course, this is the only thing nerd fans of AEW and WWE like take umbrage with. One thing CM Punk is absolutely right about, just ridiculous. CM Punk gets angry at someone stalking him, and the WWE drones come out of the woodworks to make fun of him. AEW is rent-free in the minds of people who don't like it. The Bella Twins have been announced to be making their return during the Women's Royal Rumble, as Nikki noted on the Bella's podcast that she could have more matches after the event as well. It's always fun to have surprises. My guess is there's still going to be surprises. I have no idea. People ask if it's a comeback. The greatest thing about WWE and big pay-per-views like the Rumble is you can come back for one great night and have fun. In the world of any professional sport, people always make comebacks. But what's beautiful about WWE is that we can make comebacks as many times as we want as long as our bodies let us and doctors let us. I've officially got cleared. While many consider Chris Jericho to be an all-time great, Ric Flair took to his podcast to criticize the star for his lack of wrestling fundamentals. As he noted, I do think Chris Jericho is great. This is not against Chris Jericho, but he nor me nor a lot of people will ever be on the same level as Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, or Ricky Steamboat. Punching and kicking are the fundamentals of the business, neither of which is he necessarily proficient at. He works. He can do the lion tamer, all the flips, everything in the world, and this is nothing. But the guys that are the great ones are the guys that never ever miss anything by that be a punch, kick, whatever calls for it. Does that make sense to you? Being a guest on the Wrestling Inc. Daily Podcast, ambassador for Ring of Honor, Kerry Silken, talked about his experience being backstage in AEW, saying that despite the good atmosphere, some members of the roster were worried about keeping their spot. There are so many guys there, so many guys. I am not going to bring up any names, but there were guys that were flown in to do nothing. It was a very good vibe, but since I've been around the back for 20 years, wrestlers are always unconfident, worried about their spot. I could feel that going on, certainly not with a Brian Bryan Danielson or Hangman Page, but there's just a lot of people there. With many releases from Ring of Honor and WWE, Silken mentioned that he's not sure where these stars will end up. I don't know where all these people are going to land. There's just so much good talent. We talk ROH for a second, Matt Taven, Dalton Castle, obviously the Briscoes. There are just so many names. Vincent, that have been working on their characters. Shane Taylor. They're solid people that if you or I were running a show, I think we'd want to have them. Then speaking about Ring of Honor's future, Silken said he's still an ambassador and has hopes for the promotion at future shows, with him revealing that we should hear something regarding this within the next week or so. Since that interview, ROH announced their Super Card of Honor event, which will be taking place on the 1st of April in Dallas. While WWE is reportedly interested in signing Wardlow, the man himself recently spoke to PW Insider, noting that AEW made my lifelong wildest dreams come true. Tony Khan gave me that. Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, they gave me that. The way people are treated there, the schedule. I'm so beyond blessed, and I don't think there's any convincing me that the grass is greener on any other side. Very, very happy with AEW, and the way I'm treated, and just how the whole company is ran, head to toe. With many wondering if and when Bray Wyatt will make his AEW debut, many have already pinned him to be the new leader of the Dark Order. Well, it doesn't look like that will happen, as John Silver said this on the Barstool's Wrestling podcast about those talks. I hate that so much. We get tweets like that all the time. For a while, it was like anyone that got released from WWE was going to be the next leader, so I would just make tweets like, oh, I guess Adam Cole's the next leader of the Dark Order. Anyone that doesn't make sense. Oh, it's going to be Bray Wyatt, right? No. It's not. Making an appearance on the Barstool Sports Part of My Take podcast, John Cena talked about AEW bringing out the best in WWE, saying competition brings out the best in us. For all time going out there as a performer, I wanted to do the best I could possibly do and set the tone for wanting to be the best show between Raw and SmackDown, and certainly have eyes on the segments I was on. I was fueled by a sense of internal competition, not knowing what it's like now to be in a market with a lot of different options. There are a lot of places to watch sports entertainment that would only, for me, fuel me even more to be the best I can be. After being forced to retire from in-ring competition in 2014, WWE commentator Corey Graves could be making a return at the Royal Rumble, given he's been cleared by the company. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Meltzer would note that Corey Graves was cleared by WWE doctors in 2020. The gist is that WWE Medical ruled out Graves taking any physical contact due to a post-concussion issue in 2014, and he retired at that point. Then he was made an NXT announcer and did well enough that he's been viewed as the main color guy on the main roster for years. Obviously, while he can return to wrestle, he's not going to. Court Bauer's Major League Wrestling has reportedly filed a lawsuit against WWE for uncompetitive practices due to allegations of WWE blocking a streaming deal, which would have been transformative for MLW. Now, WWE lawyer Jared McDevitt has responded, with these quotes from him being seen in The Observer this week. I have not seen the full lawsuit since WWE has not been served. If Tubi breached, then sue Tubi. As to Vice, WWE has no commercial relationship with them, or for that matter, any of the other dozens of content distribution entities with whom MLW could do a deal with if they had a commercially viable product. They put a show on Vice, if memory serves me correctly, after one of the Dark Side shows, and lost most of the audience. I think I read they got 40,000 viewers. No wonder Vice did no further deal. According to the Wrestling Observer, the AEW deals for those that originally signed with the promotion had expired in 2019, with it noted that they might have already been renewed. AEW didn't make any announcement of this, but the original 3-year deals of all the people who were there at the start, which would be Young Bucks, Cody and Brandi Rhodes, Adam Page, Chris Jericho, and some others would have expired by now. Some of the others like Nyla Rose, Britt Baker, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, and Scorpio Sky would have expired in a few weeks. The Young Bucks publicly noted that their option years were were picked, and per the original deal, got a raise for 2 more years. Some of them already signed new deals, notably Scorpio Sky, who last year signed a 5-year new deal, but obviously Paige, Cody and Brandi and Jericho were renewed since they were either on TV this week or confirmed as staying. The Bucks noted that they would be with the promotion under this new deal until 2024. Kenny Omega apparently signed a 4-year in 2019, as he should be under contract till 2023. With Ring of Honor and New Japan holding a G1 Supercard in Madison Square Garden for 2019, it has been noted by The Observer that Triple H allegedly attempted to get MSG to cancel that booking. Has WWE worked to keep different wrestling companies out of venues that they run? Absolutely. That's happened since the beginning of time. It's one of the reasons why there's only been 2 shows scheduled, I believe, for Madison Square Garden. One of them ended up being moved to the Felt Forum, which was the Triple H show that they weren't able to block. They did. The Ring of Honor and New Japan show a couple of years ago, they sold out on the first day, and WWE did get that blocked. Paul Levesque called up Madison Square Garden and said, "We don't want you booking that show." In an update on Sasha Banks and Bayley making their return to action in WWE, Meltzer would report that Banks is expected back just in time for Mania. But whether with or out for so long they go in another direction is a possibility. There is no obvious direction because nobody else on the SmackDown side has been pushed big. If Bayley can return, she's a big enough star. Bayley's return from reconstructive surgery could be as early as February, but is more likely March. Banks' return is also mid-March. Speaking of Sasha Banks, with her out of action due to injury, she will be missing the Women's Royal Rumble. On top of that, it was reported by The Observer that the company had big plans for the star at WrestleMania 38, as she was set to go one-on-one with Charlotte Flair. She is expected to return just before Mania, so we'll have to see if this match is going to take place. When it comes to stars set to miss the Royal Rumble, it looks like we can add Drew McIntyre's name to that list. The former WWE champion has been off programming due to injuries not disclosed by the company, with it reported that he is suffering from neck issues. With him recently undergoing tests on his neck, Meltzer would note that he is expected to miss the Royal Rumble match this year. It is believed that he will be back in time for WrestleMania in April, as WWE apparently had major plans for the star prior to his injury. Following her arrest in New Jersey on 2 counts of illegally possessing a weapon and 1 charge of making terroristic threats, WWE Hall of Famer Sunny has been released from jail. More details have come out regarding this incident, as police records revealed that Sunny was involved in a domestic dispute with an intimate partner. She apparently threatened the man's life with a pair of scissors, with her raising them towards the victim and threatening to kill him. She appeared in court Friday afternoon and was ordered to have weekly check-ins with the court, according to PW Insider. It would even be ruled that she can no longer possess any weapons. This domestic dispute was apparently recorded on a dash camera from a police car that responded to the 911 call. An officer reportedly witnessed the incident Thursday, with him noting that Sunny seemed to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time. If convicted, she is looking at a possible sentence of 3 to 5 years in prison for the weapons charge and an additional year for the terroristic threats. With Lita recently making her presence felt on SmackDown, it seems another promotion wanted to have her be a part of a program with one of their top stars. With it reported that Fightful learned via sources close to Lita that AEW had reached out to the WWE Hall of Famer back in 2021 to appear in a show, but the 2 sides were unable to come to terms. Specifically, we learned that a pitch was made to Lita to appear in a top program with the AEW Women's Champion Dr. Britt Baker. There were talks between the 2 sides and a creative plan laid out to possibly happen around AEW All Out 2021, but it didn't end up happening. Lita was able to lay out the SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair, as it'll be interesting to see her performance in the Women's Royal Rumble. It was previously reported that WWE is looking to bring back the Elimination Chamber for their next big show in Saudi Arabia. With it seeming like the company will not be holding their traditional Elimination Chamber pay-per-view this year, Dave Meltzer has noted that WWE is considering a name change for the chamber. It's not confirmed, but the names they are looking at are the WrestleMania Chamber or the Annual Elimination Chamber. From a story in the Toronto Star, WWE gave a statement criticizing AEW for the amount of blood and violence on their shows. They brought up Anna Jay and Ty Conti's street fight against the Bunny and Penelope Ford for the New Year's Smash edition of Rampage. As WWE noted, if you look at the gory self-mutilation that bloodied several women in the December 31st event on TNT, it quickly becomes clear that these are very different businesses. We had an edgier product in the Attitude Era, and in a 2022 world, we don't believe that type of dangerous and brutal display is appealing to network partners, sponsors, venues, children, or the general public as a whole. Now, Conti, Jay, and the Bunny have reacted by posting pictures of themselves after the match, bloodied up and smiling. With him last seen at the Crown Jewel event in October, Mustafa Ali has taken to Twitter to announce that he has requested his release from WWE, with him noting, "I have a message that is much bigger than my dreams in pro wrestling. Despite my best efforts, I will not be able to deliver this message while working with WWE. Therefore, I am requesting my release from WWE." Ringside News previously reported that WWE has a limited open door for release requests, so we'll have to see if this will be granted. Fightful would note that Ali had requested one show off to be with his wife and newborn child, as WWE has not called him back to make another appearance since then. Fightful would further report that an argument between Ali and Vince McMahon took place. As Ali revealed weeks ago, there was a vignette filmed for Mustafa Ali's New America gimmick that looked promising for the star. According to those in the know, initially the character was accepted, before those in power in WWE changed their mind. We're told that in its place there was a pitch from Vince McMahon for something Mustafa Ali would never have done, and it led to a heated argument between the two. Ali hasn't been around since.
Sleeping under a rock or something. Sleeping under a rock or something.